Marie Osmond spent decades in front of the world as a symbol of warmth, innocence, and unwavering composure. To audiences, she was the smiling face of family entertainment, someone who seemed untouched by the chaos often associated with fame. Yet, behind that carefully maintained image existed a far more complex and painful reality. Her life was not just about success and applause, but about silent struggles, emotional wounds, and the pressure of living up to impossible expectations. For years, she carried two identities, one for the public and one hidden deep within. When she finally began to speak openly, the truth revealed a story not of perfection, but of resilience, survival, and quiet strength built over a lifetime. A childhood without choice. From the very beginning, Marie's life was shaped by expectations she never chose. Born into a large and disciplined family, she was introduced to the world of performance before she could even understand it. While other children experienced carefree play, her days were filled with rehearsals, studio lights, and public appearances. The family environment was rooted in structure and responsibility, where music was not simply passion but obligation. Marie quickly learned that her role was to perform, to contribute, and to represent something larger than herself. This left little room for personal identity or emotional freedom. Even simple desires like playing outside were often denied in favor of work. Over time, she adapted by becoming obedient and composed, but at a cost. She began to lose touch with her own needs, growing up feeling more like a performer than a child discovering the world, living behind the smile. As Marie grew, she perfected the art of appearing happy while quietly struggling within. To the world, she was cheerful, polite, and effortlessly charming. But behind that image was a young girl learning to suppress her emotions. She understood early that vulnerability had no place in her life, especially under constant public attention. Instead of expressing pain, she hid it behind a smile that became second nature. This emotional separation allowed her to function, but it also created a deep inner conflict. She began to feel disconnected from herself, as though she were playing a role rather than living authentically. The expectations placed upon her made it difficult to acknowledge her own struggles, let alone share them. Over time, this silent endurance became a pattern, shaping how she handled challenges and reinforcing the belief that strength meant never showing weakness, even when everything inside felt overwhelming. Early trauma and silent wounds. One of the most difficult parts of Marie's story lies in the trauma she carried from a young age. Experiences that should never happen to a child left lasting emotional scars, yet she remained silent for decades. These events created confusion, fear, and a sense of shame she did not fully understand at the time. Without the ability to process or express what had happened, she internalized the pain, allowing it to shape her self-image and emotional responses. The silence was not a choice, but a survival mechanism, reinforced by fear and the environment around her. While the world saw a confident young performer, she was quietly struggling with feelings of insecurity and disconnection. These early wounds did not disappear as she grew older. Instead, they evolved, influencing her relationships, her sense of self, and the way she navigated the pressures of fame and personal life. Fame, pressure, and body image. As Marie entered her teenage years, the pressures of fame intensified in new and damaging ways. Working on Donny and Marie Show placed her at the center of American entertainment. But it also brought harsh scrutiny, especially regarding her appearance. Expectations around her weight became strict and unforgiving, pushing her toward unhealthy habits. Despite already being underweight, she was made to feel inadequate, leading her to extreme dieting and self-denial. This struggle was not about vanity, but about control in a life where so much was dictated by others. She began to associate her worth with how closely she could meet impossible standards. The constant comparison to other beauty icons only deepened her insecurities. While audiences admired her poise, she was fighting a private battle with her body, her identity, and the fear of not being enough in an industry that rarely showed compassion. Love, loss, and emotional exhaustion. Marie's early relationships reflected her search for understanding and connection in a life filled with pressure. She formed bonds with individuals who, like her, were navigating the complexities of fame, including Andy Gibb and David Cassidy. These relationships were meaningful, but often overshadowed by emotional challenges and instability. Love, rather than being a refuge, became another space where she faced disappointment and loss. The end of these relationships did not come with dramatic conflict, but with quiet exhaustion, leaving her feeling emotionally drained. Each experience chipped away at her belief that love could provide stability or healing. Despite her efforts to give and support others, she often found herself carrying the weight alone. These patterns reflected deeper, unresolved struggles, showing how her past continued to influence her present, shaping her expectations and emotional resilience. Marriage and hidden struggles. Marriage seemed like a path toward normalcy and healing, but it did not erase the emotional burdens Marie carried. Her first marriage to Steve Craig began with hope, but ended quickly, leaving her with a sense of failure. Her second marriage to Brian Blosel brought a large family and outward stability, yet internally she was struggling more than ever. Motherhood added responsibility, but also intensified her emotional challenges. She began experiencing severe depression, including postpartum depression, at a time when such conditions were rarely discussed openly. Everyday tasks became overwhelming, and moments of clarity were often replaced by confusion and despair. Despite having a full household and a successful career, she felt isolated in her struggles. This period highlighted how appearances can be misleading, showing that even a seemingly perfect life can hide deep emotional pain that goes unseen. Breaking silence and facing depression. Eventually, the weight of years of silence became impossible to carry alone. Marie reached a point where she could no longer hide her struggles, leading her to confront her mental health openly. When rumors and misunderstandings about her condition surfaced, she chose honesty over denial. Speaking about her experiences with depression was not easy, especially given the stigma surrounding mental health at the time. Yet her openness became a turning point, not just for herself but for many others who saw their own struggles reflected in her story. By sharing her truth, she helped normalize conversations around mental health, showing that strength lies in acknowledging pain rather than hiding it. This decision marked a shift in her life, allowing her to move from silent endurance to active healing, even though the journey was far from over. A voice that finally speaks truth. Today, Marie Osmond continues to perform, but her presence carries a different depth. She is no longer the young girl striving to meet expectations, but a woman who understands her own story and is unafraid to share it. Her voice, both in music and in life, reflects honesty, experience, and emotional strength. The years of living two separate lives have come to an end, replaced by a more unified and authentic identity. She speaks not just for herself, but for others who have faced similar struggles, offering reassurance that survival and healing are possible. Her journey is no longer about maintaining an image, but about embracing reality, showing that true strength lies in vulnerability, truth, and the courage to keep moving forward despite everything.